2025. Zambia, are we in a Nollywood horror flick? If our leaders don't wake up, deliver, and earn the people's love, we're staring down a storm worse than Nepal's bloody uprising, coups, chaos and collapse. Buckle up, family. This is a tale of shame, hope, and a call to rise.
We're going to look at two stories out of Africa today that are just worlds apart. I mean, on one hand, you have a coup plot involving a colonial era, witchcraft law, and get this alive, chameleon. And on the other, you have this revolutionary fire just sweeping through a nation. The analysis we're digging into today argues that these two events, as wild as they sound, really show a continent at a massive crossroads. Really show a continent at a massive crossroads. So let me ask you something. If you wanted to topple a president in, say, 2025, how would you do it? Right, your mind probably goes to military force, maybe some kind of huge political scandal. But what if I told you the answer was with a live chameleon? Yeah, you heard that, right? A chameleon. And this isn't some hypothetical, it's the absolutely bizarre centerpiece of a real court case that's making waves, not just in Africa, but everywhere. All right, let's get into this whole chameleon coup thing. We're starting in Zambia, where, as you can probably guess, a recent attempt to overthrow the government was, well, anything but normal. So here are the details, and this is all straight from the court records. It's December 2024. Police bust into a hotel room in Lusaka, the capital. Inside, they find two guys, Leonard Fury and Justin Mabels Kondi, and they're accused of plotting to kill the president, Hakainde Hichilema. But their arsenal, it wasn't guns or explosives. Nope, they had a chameleon, some bottles of what was called juju juice, and a bunch of animal tails. And their plan, according to the court documents, was to prick the chameleon's tail in this ritual, which they believed would magically cause the president to die in just 5 days. Wild, right? But here's where the story takes another crazy turn. You'd think, okay, that's treason. Right, wrong. They weren't convicted of treason. Instead, the court found them guilty of professing witchcraft, and to do that, they had to dig up a law from 1914, a dusty old relic from the British colonial days. The sentence, 2 years of hard labor. You see, this verdict is so much more than just a weird ending to a weird story. It cracks open this whole discussion about Zambia's colonial ghosts and how they're still hanging around today. So what's the deal with this 1914 Witchcraft Act anyway? Well, it was created by the British, and here's the kicker. Its purpose wasn't really to stop evil magic. It was a tool to criminalize and control traditional African spiritual beliefs, things the colonial government saw as a potential threat to their power. And according to the source material, this law is almost never used anymore. So for it to suddenly pop up in a major political case like this, that's what makes it so jarring. And if you thought it couldn't get any weirder, check this out. This quote is from the president himself. You know, the guy they were trying to curse. He's on record saying he doesn't even believe in witchcraft, that the whole idea is regrettable. So you've got this unbelievable paradox, right? The government is using a witchcraft law to prosecute a crime against a president who says he doesn't believe witchcraft is even real. So why? Why did this happen? Why would these guys turn to a chameleon of all things? And why would a modern government reach back 100 years for a law to deal with it? The analysis really points to two big things, widespread belief and just sheer desperation. Okay, first up, belief. You know, the president might say it's regrettable, but the reality on the ground is different. Surveys show that a massive 79% of people in Zambia believe in witchcraft. That's nearly 4 out of every 5 people. It's not some fringe idea. It's woven deep into the culture. And then there's the desperation, and this is driven by some really tough economic realities. Just think about this. Youth unemployment is at 60%, and almost half, 40% of the entire country's budget is just eaten up by debt payments. The argument being made here is pretty clear. When the normal way of doing things, you know, politics and the economy fails you that badly, it's no wonder people start looking for other solutions, even supernatural ones. Okay, so park that story for a second, because while Zambia is dealing with colonial laws and economic pain, the source material tells us to look a few thousand kilometers away. It's a completely different story unfolding in West Africa, in Burkina Faso. A whole different kind of energy is taking over there, and at the center of it is this guy, Captain Ibrahim Traore. He's only 34. He came to power in 2022, and he's not just shuffling papers in the capital. He is trying to completely tear up the old rulebook and rewrite how his country operates on the world stage, and his moves have been fast and bold. First thing, he kicked out the French military. Next, he's nationalizing the country's gold mines, basically saying this wealth belongs to us. He's also pushing local industry like a new tomato factory that's creating 500 jobs. And he's shaking up alliances, turning to countries like Russia for security help instead of the usual Western powers. So you might be wondering, how is all this radical change going over with the public? Well, in April 2025, there was a rumor of a counter-coup against him. And what happened? Over 100,000 people poured into the streets of the capital, not to protest him, but to support him. That's a massive, undeniable show of public power. So there you have it, a tale of two Africas, really, the chameleon and the captain. You've got one leader using a colonial-era witchcraft law, and another leader backed by this huge popular movement, and the source material really frames this as two completely different roads a country can go down. Let's just lay it out side by side. On the one hand, in Zambia, you have an administration leaning on old colonial laws, dealing with whispers of becoming more authoritarian, all while the economy is in real trouble. On the other hand, in Burkina Faso, you have a leader taking control of the country's resources, getting cheered on by hundreds of thousands in the streets and overseeing an economy that's actually projected to grow by 8%. And it's important to see that what's happening in Burkina Faso isn't some isolated event. It's part of a much bigger pattern that's been developing across this region, sometimes called the Coups belt. Since 2020, you've seen one country after another, Mali, Guinea, Niger, experience these military takeovers, and a lot of them are driven by the same feelings: frustration with corruption, a rejection of old colonial ties, and a powerful demand for real independence. So what does it all mean? What do these two stories, the chameleon and the captain, really tell us about where Africa is headed? Well, the core argument in the analysis we're looking at is that this is the choice. Is the future going to look more like Zambia's story, kind of stuck relying on the structures of the past? Or is it going to look more like Burkina Faso? Faso's a sharp, decisive break, trying to forge a totally new and independent path. And based on that contrast, the source proposes a kind of roadmap for the future. It's about things like, actually decolonizing the system, getting rid of laws like that 1914 Witchcraft Act. It's about taking control of natural resources for the benefit of the people, building stronger alliances within Africa for things like defense and trade, pouring money and energy into young people and technology, and of course a no-holds-barred fight against corruption. And really the whole idea is summed up perfectly in this one quote. It says, a leader who is truly loved by the people doesn't need to waste time chasing down charms in a courtroom. Why? Because the people, the masses, are his fortress. Their support is all the protection he needs. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. In today's messy world, with all the global politics, the economic stress, the threats from inside and out, is the love of the people the only real shield a leader has? It's a heck of a question, and it's one these two incredible stories from Africa really force us to think about. Imagine a legal case that feels straight out of a movie. A trial in Zambia where a live chameleon and something called juju juice are central to an alleged coup plot against the president.
Yeah, right, it's wild. The whole scenario, set in December 2024 in Lusaka, blends traditional beliefs with modern political pitfalls.
Exactly. Police were called over some odd sounds at a hotel, and they discovered a Zambian suspect along with a Mozambican traditional healer. And inside the room, there was a live chameleon, a jar, and a dozen bottles of this mysterious liquid.
And then, get this, the charge was about bewitching the president to cause his death in 5 days by pricking the chameleon's tail. Seriously, it sounds almost surreal.
Yeah, it's like something from folklore, yet it's real. And the 1914 colonial law is still being used. The accused faces 2 years of hard labor for witchcraft and 6 months for the actual charms.
But here's where it gets interesting. The government under President Hichilema, who publicly dismisses witchcraft, is ironically leaning on these archaic laws. Don't you think that's a bit, contradictory?
Absolutely, it's a paradox. I mean, he says only God gives life, but still depends on a colonial-era act to prosecute these cases. It's a clash between modern governance and age-old beliefs.
Now shifting gears, what about that bloodless coup in Burkina Faso?
Well, in September 2022, a young captain, Ibrahim Traoré, pulled off a coup that felt almost inspirational. Unlike the odd witchcraft trial, His move was driven by tangible reforms, nationalizing gold mines, creating jobs, and building essential services like clinics and roads.
That's remarkable. Over 100,000 people rallied in Ouagadougou during his takeover. It's like he tapped into a deep seat of public support.
Right, and that's the contrast. In Zambia, you see there's this spectral, almost theatrical reliance on outdated laws, while in Burkina Faso it was bold and reformative.
Yeah, I gotta challenge that a bit. Don't you think both events, in their own way, reflect desperate measures in troubled times? One might argue that the bizarre witchcraft trial and the coup both highlight a governance failing to address critical public needs.
Sure, I see your point. They both underscore how political neglect and archaic legal systems create a space where extreme, sometimes surreal responses happen. In Zambia, it's a reliance on colonial hangovers, and in Burkina Faso, it's a populist uprising demanding real change.
And really, it forces us all to think. What happens when leaders are disconnected from the people's needs? When economic hardships and outdated practices persist, even magic or mysticism can become a tool of political rhetoric.
Exactly. It's a vivid reminder that legitimacy in leadership comes from actual transformation and engagement. These narratives push us to reimagine governance that truly serves the people.
So whether it's the surreal trial in Zambia or the transformative coup in Burkina Faso, the underlying message is clear. Real change demands more than just old laws or theatrical gestures. It needs substance and accountability.
Absolutely. It challenges us to reconsider how tradition and modernity collide and how governance must evolve to meet today's realities.
Yeah.